All right, I'm here with a friend of mine, Mr. Ralph Velasco. He's a travel photographer, and he's one of those photographers that just, is kind of we can live vicariously through Ralph because he's just bouncing all over the place. We were talking before I clicked the record button, and I wrote down. He was just rattling off the places that he's been within just the last couple of months, the last 3 months. Been on 7 trips. He's been to Turkey, Tuscany, all over Europe and Morocco, Iceland, and a bunch of other places are planned in the coming future. So in the first interview I did with Ralph, we were talking about the traveling and kind of getting to know Ralph and why he does this stuff and the origin story of Ralph Velasco. In this interview, I want to dive into planning and scouting. Clearly Ralph is the expert, so we're going to talk about how you get ready for a trip like this as a photographer and just as a regular person that's going to one of these amazing places. How do you get ready for it so that you can maximize your time there? Because presumably you only have a couple of days in each spot. So Ralph Velasco, welcome back to the show.
Hey, great to be here again.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure chatting with you. Like I said, I can live vicariously through you. I get emails from you and like, hey, Frederick, I'm over here. I'm doing this. I'm in this strange hotel. There's no bandwidth. You have got to be you've got to be like the favorite person on the airlines, or maybe the least favorite person on the airlines, because you probably fly free everywhere you go. Is that? I mean, how does that feel?
No, not quite, but I do have some status on some of the airlines, so I get the upgraded seat once in a while and get to use my miles for some nice first class trips around, halfway around the world. So that's always fun. I splurge on those.
That's awesome. That's really cool. So let's dive into this. So you like in the introduction, I introduced you as a travel photographer, right? So first of all, just define travel photographer because we're all travel photographers, right? I don't go anywhere, even to the store generally, without a camera with me, even if it's just my iPhone, right? So what's a travel photographer?
Well, that's a great question, and I think in my definition is that a travel photographer has to be a jack of all trades, master of some.
Hmm.
And by that I mean that there's so many different types of images that we should be on the lookout for when we are shooting travel photography, and not specifically maybe landscape or people photography, etc. But with travel photography, we want to be able to come back with a nice, well-rounded set of images that tells the story of the place.
Hmm.
And so it's virtually impossible to be a master of all these different types of genres of photography. But if we can be pretty good at a lot of them and hopefully master a few of them, I think that that's a really good start. And so, by travel photography, I think that it's something that's it's fairly it's there's a lot to it. It's more than just being a specific genre of photographer.
Yeah. So yeah, like you said, jack of all trades, master of some. But that doesn't mean that like when you say master of some, that means you need to be proficient at a lot of different ways of taking photos. For example, you're in I don't know, Morocco and you want to do some long exposures of the water lapping on the rocks there, right? So you need to understand the basics of long exposures and well, I was going to say reciprocity failure, but that doesn't apply in, in digital. But you have to understand these things like from a situational standpoint. For example, okay, I want to do long exposures there because that's the right thing for this particular scene. But now I'm going to go do some street photography, so I need to use this particular lens, and I need to have some people skills and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, and you're really jumping from one type of photography to the other. Sometimes, certainly night photography, and recent. I just got back from Iceland on Sunday with the group, and so there we're definitely photographing a lot of different types of waterfalls, trying to get those longer exposures. So I have to be able to be proficient and be able to teach my people how to capture those images best, and how to approach people, architecture, just all these different types of images. So I certainly don't consider myself proficient at all these different types of photography, But I like to think I'm pretty good, and have a few that I excel in more. And I think everyone could probably say that who travels quite a bit. We tend to have an interest in certain types of photography. We get really good at those, and then the other ones we sort of chip away at. And I always say you can't get worse at photography. So
Yeah.
the more you're doing it, the better you'll get at any type of genre that you're working on.
Yeah, repetition. It's like driving. The more you drive, the better driver you become. With photography, the more presses of that trigger finger or the shutter finger that you have, the better understanding you have of what's going to result from that image with the camera at those particular settings. So let's talk about just preparation for these, and that's what I wanted to center this interview or this discussion on, and that's just the whole idea of the things that you do before you head out on one of these trips or in preparation for one of these trips. You mentioned scouting and just being prepared for when you go there. And I recently went on a shoot with a friend of mine, and it was kind of a spur of the moment thing. We were in Santa Cruz and we're gonna go take some photos of some people on the beach, right? Some friends on the beach, but it was at dusk, and it was just kind of like, let's just go out there and take some photos. We're photographers, we have our gear with us. But it turns out we get there and there's like, you kind of go into photojournalist mode because you got to assess the situation and figure out the best way to get the best kind of image that you can get given the variables that are presented to you. Like, okay, we're losing light and the tide's coming in and there's rocks and there's people over there that could be in the background. How do you avoid those kinds of things? I mean, do you go out first and take notes? Are you cognizant of the sunset time? How does a Ralph Velasco go out there and be prepared for your workshop group when you take them to a location so that they're going to get the best results possible?
Well, I spend a lot of time scouting these locations beforehand. So typically, if it's a 2-week trip that I'm planning, I'll go about a year in advance and spend 2 weeks in that location and try to go to all the different locations within a country, let's say, and be there at different times of day, find out when the best times of day are to be in particular locations, certainly considering the sun, crowds, things like that, trying to get out in advance of the crowds. I mean, that's something that I'm really big on. So I tend to get my groups out fairly early and try to beat the crowds and beat the heat of the day, things like that. But it's a lot of time consuming and expensive scouting that goes into these trips, because once I've got my group there, I can't afford for there to be any mistakes, and
Yeah.
so I try to get that all out of the way at the beginning. I might, like I just did Turkey. Well, that was the first trip that I did about 3 months ago when I left, and I was there for 2 weeks and probably went to, I would say, 30 to 40 different locations in 14 days, but I'll include maybe 6 or 7 on the trip. But I need to, get a taste and a feel for those different locations, figure out which ones fold into the trip the best as far as timing goes, and all these different variables. But it's a lot of it comes down to spending a lot of time and money scouting these trips beforehand, because I want them to go without a hitch when I'm there with my group.
Now, so for the average person, that's not leading workshops and all these sort of things, they don't have a lot of time and or money to go on a full scouting mission. For example, if they know, they're going to Europe, right? Say they're going to Barcelona, and they want to make sure they get great shots. This is a once in a lifetime trip for this person, so there's not like they're going to fly to Barcelona, scout out the locations, and then come back and then go. What should that person do? How can that person be prepared to get the right shots?
Well, without being facetious, that would be a great time to go on a tour, because someone like myself has already done that scouting. Now, I realize that not everyone likes to go on tours, they're more expensive, because people like me have spent the time and money to do all that preliminary work. But let's say you're just going to a place on your own, and one of the things that I recommend, and it's definitely touristy, is one of those hop on hop off buses that
Hmm.
sort of takes you through all the city highlights very quickly. And if you can do that at the beginning of your trip, then you can get a really good overview of the place and come back and focus on just a few of those locations and get back there at the best time of day. But I always say that the number one tip I can give anyone is to get out early, because you're going to avoid the crowds, the heat of the day, traffic, all those things, and you're going to get I like to get out there maybe 7:30 in the morning when the city's waking up, the locals on their way to work, kids on their way to school. Those are the people that I like to get in my photographs, and I certainly recommend that for others. But it can be overwhelming to just land in a place. But also doing preliminary research on GettyImages.com,
Hmm.
Corbis, and Flickr, and seeing what other professionals or even other amateur photographers are photographing in a place and what interests you and what you'd like to go. And we certainly don't want to copy what other people are doing, but perhaps just putting your own spin on it, getting ideas.
Yeah, 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 and that's 90% of it, right? You just get in there, and there, like you said, there's services like Getty and iStock and Shutterstock, or just Google Images, right? And do a search and see, oh, look at that awesome photo in this place that I'm going, and say note where it is and the time of day, and try to copy it, right? But at least you get an idea of what's possible from that particular location, right?
For sure, and you could see where people are spending their time, at what time of day. Search night photography. You can put in all these different keywords to see what people are shooting in those locations, and that gives you ideas for what's there. And then I always recommend trying to put your own spin on it.
Yeah. Now, Ralph, what about gear? Right. So, and this is a problem I see with lots of photographers, because I've attended a bunch of workshops. I haven't led any workshops yet, but I've been on workshops where there seems to always be the person that has more gear than they need, right? So there's like bags and bags and Scotty vests, and I got this DSLR and another one over here and a backup in the bag, and look at all these expensive lenses and strobes and all this stuff. And then there's the other person that has like like a little Fuji X100S, with a fixed lens, and they're making awesome images. When you advise people on the type of gear that they should bring to one of these workshops, let's pick one. Let's say, Iceland. What do you tell them? What do you say? This is what you need to bring in order to bring back the goods.
Yeah, I always provide a gear list beforehand, but I emphasize that, and I mentioned this in the last interview, that I typically shoot with one body and one lens.
Hmm.
It's a 24 to 120 lens on a full frame camera. Again, I miss some shots because I don't maybe have the exact right lens, but I like to think that I get other shots because I'm very flexible, mobile, quick moving. Iceland, where it's a lot of landscape photography, waterfalls, things like that, things that are not going to are not really moving subjects, as opposed to say the market in Fez or another city scene or street photography. It's a very different type of photography, so it's very quick moving, and it's not a good time to try to shoot manual.
Yeah.
I recommend aperture priority. I shoot auto ISO, auto white balance, because we're really moving through these places fairly quickly, and people aren't going to wait for us to figure out settings and things like that. And I think one thing that surprises a lot of the people on my trips is that they are surprised at how quickly I shoot,
Yeah.
because the people aren't going to sit there and pose for me. They might, but those are usually not the kinds of shots that I'm after. I prefer the more candid shots. So
When you're out there and you're say you're in India or something, and you're on the streets, and presumably you don't speak the language, and there's this great shot of say this person here, and you want to grab this shot. how do you approach that person for that shot, or do you? And what's the flow? You're walking down the street, you got a group of people with you, presumably all that look very foreign to that area, and you all have cameras, and this awesome scene is going on. What's the start to finish flow of getting that shot?
Well, I'm trying to assess the overall situation. I want to try to, again, get that candid shot. So I might shoot in between people and try to get that shot very quickly. Because I've been to a place and scouted it out, I usually get all my shots on those scouting trips, but I am shooting along with my group. And I tell people that I'm going to be shooting alongside you, but I'm here to help you. Your photography comes first. But I am photographing at the same time, so I might get a couple quick shots, point out the opportunity. If the person, sometimes I think it's good to photograph in small groups or even one or two or three people, because then when the person is looking at one photographer, the other one's getting a more candid view, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a teamwork that can happen. One person can engage the subject, the other one could get the candid shots because they're talking to the other person. But I'm trying to point out photo opportunities, maybe talk about the light, quality of light. Maybe there's harsh shadows or something that we don't want on the subject. So always trying to instill in people that they need to look deeper into the scene and to notice busy backgrounds, notice shadows that are too harsh, or ways to improve the subject that they're photographing, that scene.
Got it. Cool. So then let's switch over to the idea of, and I wrote a note here, just sort of the complete story, right? So when you, again, use an example of myself, when I get to a location, at least a while ago, I'd get there and not really know what I wanted to shoot. So it's like, oh wow, say I'm in New Zealand. It's like, oh wow, this is amazing. Okay, I need to get some shots of some mountains. Okay, now I want to get some shots of this tree over here, and now this, and but you end up with a bunch of cool shots, but nothing to sort of weave them together. And I know you're kind of a proponent of having an overall wrapper around that and telling a story. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, I certainly nothing that I created or invented, but certainly I'm always thinking about getting that overall shot of the scene and then breaking it down into smaller components, so the medium and detail shots too that make it up. That's one of the ways to tell a story, is to start big and then sort of zoom in on individual parts of the scene too. I talked last time about the photography app that I came up with, my shot list for travel, and that again is about preparing and having an idea of what you want to photograph before you even get to a place.
Yeah.
And so the more you know what you're on the lookout for, the more you're going to see it and recognize and be able to take advantage of that photo opportunity. One of the things I always recommend, especially in the morning or whenever we go out for a new shoot during the day, is to look over all the settings on your camera, make sure they're right for those conditions right then and there. Maybe last night you were out doing some night photography and you were on a tripod and you've got your VR or IS off and you want to make sure that's on, and just all these settings are right for whatever it is that you're photographing at that moment.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, you don't want to get out there and be fiddling in the dark or wherever you are with knobs and dials and trying to figure out the right setting, or even worse. And I've done this. When I was in the military, we were shooting film. You forget, or you assume that you have one kind of film in the camera when in fact you have another kind of film in the camera. And you go out and do a whole job with black and white film when you thought you had color slide film in the camera, and not good. yeah, but those days are over. Hopefully, those days are over. So Ralph, let's wrap it up here. So the workshops. What workshops do you have coming up in the future?
Well, I'm leaving next week for Cuba. I've got a people-to-people program there. That one is sold out and registration's closed. But in August, I'm bringing a small group of just 4 participants to Copper Canyon, Mexico.
Cool.
And that's one of my favorite places in Mexico. It's 4 times bigger and it's deeper than the Grand Canyon.
Mm.
And there's one of the great train rides of the world going right through it. And I was first introduced to it about 3 years ago when I had an assignment to shoot the travel and cultural images for a cookbook on the regional cuisine of Mexico. And we had gone to something like 40-plus locations in 35 days. And the one place I said I wanted to bring a group back to was Copper Canyon. And you've got the Tarahumara people who are just fascinating. They're known as the running people. They have very distinctive faces, very distinctive facial features, wear very distinctive clothing. So that clothing is certainly going to be on my shot list. So making sure that capturing anything distinctive in the place. So that's a place I'm going to bring a group back to. I've got a trip to Central Europe in September. Tuscany, that trip sold out for September. Bhutan, Nepal in October, and then Cambodia trip in early December.
Wow.
A couple of your listeners are signed up for that, so that was nice.
Oh, very cool. Thanks,
Yeah.
thanks TWiP Army for supporting our guest Ralph. That's very cool.
Appreciate that.
I'm one of these days. I promise I'm coming on one of these trips, Ralph. I am coming on one of these trips, probably in 2015 if you're still doing the trips, and when I assume you will be. But
Oh, absolutely. For sure. No.
I'm coming. You have any plan for Asia, like somewhere like in like Korea or anything like that?
Not Korea, but again, Cambodia I'm doing in December, and I'll probably do that again next year around the same time because it's a great time to be there. I may be scouting Vietnam after this trip in December, so that would be for a future trip next year. Other than that, in Asia, nothing. But I've got Romania I'll be scouting this year, and I just got back from the Balkans, which is like Croatia, Montenegro, Slovenia, beautiful area. And I'll be scouting in Sicily as well in September, October. So a lot of cool new trips for next year, and I'll be bringing back a lot of the favorites. You know, from this year and the past several years. So a lot of. Cool
you sound like you'd make the perfect secret agent because you're. That'd be the perfect movie plot. The travel photographer's cover is travel photographer, but really he's a secret agent going to these cool places like Impossible Mission Force.
Oh, we need to talk about that because I've just written about 3 pages of notes for the exact same idea that I think it would be kind of cool.
That would be cool. I mean, that's a script.
Yeah.
That's a script. You need to write that and get it out there. You know,
Let's do
and
it.
you could star in it. You could star in your own feature.
Sounds
Cool.
good.
Well, where should people go to sign up for these workshops or to see some of your work and get that iPhone app that you were talking about?
Yeah, I'd love it if people would visit my website at ralphvelasco.com. That's pretty much where everything is. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Google+, all at Ralph Velasco. And if you go to the website and look for tours, hover over that, you'll see a drop-down of all the future trips I have coming up. If you go to iTunes and you search for my shot lists for travel or Ralph Velasco, the app should come up there, as well as my most recent ebook, Essence of a Place, Travel Photographer's Guide to Using a Shot List for Capturing Any Destination.
Mm-hmm.
And with regards to the app, I'm in the process of updating it right now with having capability of being able to share your images on Facebook, Twitter, via email, updating all new images, verbiage, and so that's an update that people can look forward to in the next probably 30 to 60 days or so. But if you purchase it now, of course, you'll get that update automatically when it comes out. But we're trying to to update it for iOS 6 and 7.
Love it, love it.
It's so much work, though. You don't realize that it seems so easy to do an update, but there's always so much more to it than you think.
Right, and iOS 8 is on the horizon too, so.
So I got to get it done before that.
Yeah, it's a conveyor belt, my friend. It never ends.
It is like holding back the sea. Just never ending. But it's fun.
Well, cool, Ralph. We'll have a safe trip on this next upcoming trip. Cuba, did you say? Is the next one?
Yep, coming up next week. Yep.
Yep. Have a safe trip. Get some good shots, and my advice to you is just plan. Make sure you plan. Do your scouting and homework, before you get out.
I'll try.
Yes. Well, Ralph, always a pleasure to have you on This Week in Photo, and I will we'll catch up to you next time. Hopefully, after the next couple of trips, we'll catch up again.
That would be fantastic. Thanks so much for having me on, Frederick.
You're welcome. Take care, Ralph.
Take care.